So hello students and welcome to the lecture. So students, as we know that we are covering the parliament, right? This is the topic on which we are discussing right now. And within this particular topic of the parliament, all of these are the topics that we had scheduled for the discussion. Starting with the introduction part, thereafter the organization of parliament, thereafter composition of two houses, thereafter system of elections to the Lok Sabha, thereafter duration of two houses, thereafter membership of parliament, thereafter presiding officers of parliament, thereafter leaders in parliament, thereafter sessions of parliament, thereafter the devices of the parliamentary proceedings, thereafter legislative procedure in parliament, thereafter joint sitting of two houses, thereafter budget in parliament, thereafter multifunction role of parliament, thereafter the ineffectiveness of the parliamentary control, thereafter positions of Rajya Sabha, thereafter parliamentary privileges, and then the sovereignty of parliament. Okay. So these are the topics we had scheduled for discussion. Talking about the topics we have covered so far. So basically we have covered the introduction part. Okay. Covered the organizations of parliament, covered the composition of two houses, covered the system of elections to Lok Sabha, covered the duration of two houses, covered the membership of parliament, covered the presiding officers of parliament, covers the leaders in parliament, thereafter the sessions of parliament, then devices of the parliamentary proceedings, thereafter legislative procedure in parliament, thereafter joint sitting of two houses, and then the budget in parliament. Okay, these questions or these topics, that are the topics we have covered so far. If we talk about the topic that we are covering right now, then basically we are discussing over the multifunction role of parliament. Okay, this is the topic on which we are discussing right now. If we talk about the topic that we are left with, ineffectiveness of parliamentary control, position of Rajya Sabha, parliamentary privileges, sovereignty of parliament. Okay, so this is the picture we have created so far altogether. Okay, now let's talk about the topic that we are going to start right now in this lecture. So basically in this lecture we are going to start the discussion over multifunctional role of parliament. Okay, this is going to be a topic that we are going to discuss. So judicial powers and the functions. Now many of you will think that basically whenever we talk about the judiciary and all, then we always go to the pillars of the democracy. Like we know, the democracy having the three pillars. Nowadays we also say four pillars. I will tell you why we say four pillars, but before let's cover the three pillars. These three pillars are legislature, executive, and judiciary. Okay, The legislature is tasked to make the rules and regulations for the country. Okay. Thereafter, the executives. The executives are in charge to execute those rules and regulations and ensure their complete execution and implementation. Judiciary is there to check out the constitutional validity of the legislature and the executive actions and the policies. Thereafter, also look after if there is any violation committed against the past rules and regulations. Okay. So and last, the fourth pillar of the democracy is nowadays the media, because the media shows you the what the government is doing, what the court is doing, and whatever going in your surrounding. All right, that's the thing. So most of us will counter that why we are talking about the judicial powers and the functions, but in respect of the parliament. Okay, in respect of the parliament. Why? Because the parliament is the legislature, and the legislature in India not having the power to interfere with the judiciary, right? So why we are conceding the judicial powers and functions in the parliament? So here the simple answer is that basically the Constitution of India by itself granted several powers to the parliament in terms of judiciary, and this is called the powers. And by exercising those powers, what are the functions the parliament do? So these are the judicial powers and the functions of the parliament, including first, it can impeach the president for the violation of the constitution. Like we know, basically to remove the president of India, okay, there is a process of impeachment. And what is this process? This process says this: basically an advance 14 days notice is to be given to the president that an impeachment is to be brought against him in the parliament. Okay. Then the bill for impeachment requires the special majority, and special majority means two conditions. First, that 2/3 strength sitting and voting must be in favor of the impeachment. Second, more than 50% members of the parliament sitting and voting must be in a favor of impeaching the president. So if these two conditions got satisfied, then only the president's impeachment process could be justified and the president could be removed. And on which basis he could be removed? If he violates the any constitution provision that is regarding his power, functions, and official duties. So in this case, to prove president as a guilty of misusing the constitution, which is generally a part of the judiciary, in the case of president, this power is granted to the Parliament of India. Got it? Thereafter, second, Parliament could also remove the vice president from his office. The vice president, who is also the by default chairperson of the Rajya Sabha. Okay, he could be removed from the office by following the process of impeachment. Okay. Third, the Parliament could recommend the removal of judges of the Supreme Court, including the High Courts also. Sorry, Supreme Court and High Courts, including their Chief Justice. Like in case of Supreme Court, the Chief Justice of India. In case of High Court, the Chief Justice. Okay. These judges could be removed by the Parliament by following the same procedure of impeachment. Now, I'm going to ask you a simple question. On which two grounds the impeachment of the Supreme Court and High Court judges could be carried out? Again, I'm repeating. On which grounds the removal or the impeachment of High Court and Supreme Court judges could be carried out. So the two grounds on which the judges could be removed, first is case of misbehavior, second is case of incapacity. Misbehavior or incapacity grounds. So what do we understand by them? Let's understand them first. First case was the misbehavior. So we can say that judges of the Supreme Court and the High Court, whether they are Chief Justice or a normal justice, okay, these judges and these justices are not allowed to get indulged with the government and office of profit, if any, not allowed to favor anyone intentionally, and not allowed to misuse their constitutional powers or their official powers. Okay. So if they committed any of these things, they got indulged in the office of profit with the central government or the, okay, or any other government organization, then that will be a case of misbehavior. If they misuse their constitutional and the official powers, that will be a case of misbehavior. All right. Thereafter, the chief election commissioners, they could be removed by the parliament. Now, here is a one thing. If we're talking about the chief election commissioner, now I'm going to ask you a question. And this is going to be some tricky question. The question is, in India, who could appoint the election commissioners, including the chief election commissioners, and who could remove the election commissioners of India? Again, I'm repeating. Who could in India appoint the election commissioners, including the chief election commissioners, and could remove the election commissioners? Correct answer is the election commissioners and the chief election commissioners, they could be appointed by the President of India. Okay, he could appoint them. But chief election commissioner could be removed by the parliament only, and the election commissioners, I'm not saying the chief, I'm saying the normal election commissioners, they could be removed by the chief election commissioner only. Okay, on the recommendation of the chief election commissioner, they could be removed. All right, so remember this thing. Thereafter, Comptroller and Auditor General of India could be removed by the parliament, but because all of these are generally appointed by the president on the recommendations of parliament, okay, then remember their removal could also be not directly by the parliament. It means the parliament directly could not remove any of these, okay, and these could be removed by the president on after the recommendations of the Parliament of India. Thereafter, it can punish its member or outsider for the breach of its privileges or its contempt. Okay. Like if we talk about the parliament's members, then we know the parliamentary members are generally getting the privileges. Okay. So if any of the parliamentary member misuses these privileges, then the parliament could punish them. Okay. And if there is any outsider who not belong to the parliament, but this outsider is basically violates the parliament's rule and all, then he could be punished by the parliament for the contempt of the parliament. Okay. So these are the judicial powers and the functions that are being enjoyed by the Parliament of India. First, could impeach the president if the president violates the constitution. Okay. Thereafter, could also remove the vice president of India from his office if they found misconducting their powers. Third, the parliament could also recommend the removal of judges of the Supreme Court and the High Courts, including the Chief Justice, okay, Chief Election Commissioner, Comptroller and Auditor General, by recommending their removal to the President of India. Thereafter, the Parliament also having the power to punish its own members if they found breaching the privileges they have got, and outsiders if the outsider has found by contempting the parliamentary provisions. Okay. Thereafter, in the Parliament, under the head of the multifunctional role of a Parliament, we have 6 points. And the 6th point is electoral powers and the functions. Okay. What are the electoral powers or the functions that are being exercised by the Parliament? Remember, there are the 2 words additionally used here, like the powers. It means what are the powers granted by the Constitution to the Parliament and how the Parliament function by using these powers. So remember, these 2 words are basically interconnected to each other. Okay. So electoral are basically related with the elections. Electoral is basically related with the election powers. Okay. That are being overlooked and conducted by the Parliament. Okay. The first in this is that the Parliament often participates in the election of the President, along with the State Legislative Assembly, and also elects the Vice President. Now here I have a question for you. Procedure of electing the President of India has been brought from which constitution? Again, I'm repeating, the procedure for electing the President of India has been brought up from which constitution of the world? So basically, the correct answer is Irish Constitution. From the Constitution of Ireland, we had brought the concept of president elections also. Okay. Now, the second question, if I ask you from the same thing, is that another important provision we had brought up from the same Constitution of Ireland that emphasizes the social and economical democracy of the country. What was that provision? Again, I'm repeating. From the same Constitution of Ireland, we had brought a provision that emphasizes the social and economical politics, you can say, democracy of the country. What was the provision? The correct answer is DPSP. DPSP is the answer. DPSP stands out for Directive Principles of the State Policy that emphasizes the social and economical democracy of country. If we're talking about the social and economical democracy, then there is an provision of fundamental rights that emphasizes the political democracy of the country. Now the question is, in which part of the Constitution the fundamental rights are enumerated? Again, I'm repeating, there are the fundamental rights in the Constitution of India that emphasizes on the political democracy of the country. In which part of the Constitution of India these fundamental rights are mentioned? Correct answer is part 4. The part 4 of Indian Constitution is the part in which the fundamental rights are enumerated. Okay. So if we talk about the parliamentary participation in the election of the president, then there is another very interesting fact. And the fact I will ask you as a question. Okay. So, which members of the parliament and the state legislative assemblies allowed to take part in the president's election? Again, I am repeating, which members of the parliament and the state legislative assemblies are allowed to take part in the voting of the president? So the correct answer is only the elected members of the parliament and the state legislative assemblies could take part in the election of the president of India. During the election of vice president of India, both the elected and the nominated members could be taken part. Apart from this, the Lok Sabha is empowered to elect its speaker and the deputy speaker, while the Rajya Sabha is allowed to elect its speaker and the deputy chairman. Allowed its chairperson. Okay, there is a mistake. My mistake. Basically, in Rajya Sabha, chairperson is already set up because whosoever would be the vice president of India, he will be automatically a chairperson of the Rajya Sabha. So the Rajya Sabha is not having the power to elect the chairperson, all right, but they could elect the vice president. And because whosoever would be elected as a vice president will automatically a chairman of the Rajya Sabha. Whereafter, the deputy chairman is in their hand, so they elected. Thereafter, the Parliament of India also authorized to make laws to regulate the elections to the office of president and vice president. Because we know president and vice presidents, they both are the constitutional roles and their powers and their articles are basically enumerated in the Constitution of India. So the parliament is having the power to amend the constitution. Automatically, the parliament having the power to amend the articles related with the offices of president and the vice president. So that's how the Parliament of India regulates the election to them and their offices also. To both the houses of parliament and to both the houses of state legislature, whichsoever the elections would be happen. How the elections would be happen? What will be the code of conduct? How the things would be done? All of these things could be regulated by the Parliament of India. And accordingly to it, the Parliament of India also enacted the various laws like the Presidential and Vice Presidential Election Act 1952, like Representation of People's Act 1950, like Representation of People Act 1951, etc. So these are some of the examples of parliament electoral power which the parliament exercised and functioned and enacted these laws. Okay. After this, now we have other powers and the functions of the parliament which they exercise. The various other powers and the functions of the parliament are like this. First, the parliament serves as the highest deliberative body in the country. It means it discusses various issues of national and international significance. And almost each and every issue of the nation or within the territories of India could be taken up and could be discussed by the parliament. Thereafter, it approves all the three types of emergencies: national emergency, state emergency, any financial emergency that is proclaimed by the President of India. It can create or abolish the state legislative councils on the recommendation of their concerned state legislative assembly. If the legislative assembly wants to create a council, the parliament could create a council. If the assembly wants to abolish the council, the parliament will abolish the council. Okay. Thereafter, under the Article 2 and 3 of the Indian Constitution, we know The parliament also having the power to change the provisions of Article 1 that covers the three things: territories of state, union territories, and the territories that may be, you can say, taken over by the government anytime. Okay, so that's how the parliament could increase, decrease the area, alter the boundaries, and even the change the name of the states of Indian Union. It can also regulate the organization and the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court and High Courts, and could also establish a common High Court for two or more states. Thereafter, if we talk about the ineffectiveness of parliamentary control, the parliamentary control over the government and the administration in India is more theoretical on papers than practical in reality. In reality, the control is not that effective as it is out to be. Following factors are responsible for this. First, Parliament has neither time nor expertise to control the administration, which has grown in volume as well as complexity over the period of time. Parliament's financial control is generally hindered by the technical nature of the demands for grants, and the parliamentarians, being a layman and not that much of technically advanced in the demands for grants, cannot understand them properly and fully, and that's why the loopholes created. The legislative leadership lies with the executive, plays a significant role in formulating the policies. The very size of parliament is too large and unmanageable to be effective sense. Majority support enjoyed by the executive in the parliament reduces the possibility of effective criticism. The financial committees like the Public Account Committee examine the public expenditure after it has been incurred by the executive. Thus, they do post-mortem work, not the pre-work. The increased figures to guillotine reduce the scope of financial control also. The growth of the delegated legislation had reduced the role of parliament in making the detailed laws and has increased the power of bureaucracy. Frequent promulgation of ordinances by the president dilutes the parliament's power of legislation. Parliament control is sporadic, general, and mostly political in nature. Lack of strong and steady opposition in parliament and a setback in the parliamentary behavior and ethics also contribute to the ineffectiveness of legislative control over the administration in India. So students, basically in this lecture, we have finished till here. In the next lecture, we will continue from here. Till then, just revise the facts and figures that all we have discussed in this lecture and keep yourself ready for the next lecture. With this note, we are going to end this lecture, and thank you for your